Um, do we have any petitions from the audience? I've not been made aware of any. No? Okay.
Do you need to do roll call?
Mm-hmm.
Do we normally do roll call on the committee meetings? Okay, let's do roll call.
They don't put it on these, but we're supposed to.
Gantier,
Yes?
Shropshire,
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
Okay, and so no petitions from the audience. Number 3, discuss possibly approve the minutes of the October 29th, 2024 meeting.
Motion?
Second.
Motion second, any discussion? Call for vote.
Gantier,
Yes.
Shropshire,
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
Number 4, discussion and possible action to recommend that the Economic Development Trust Authority review the trust indenture requirement for trustee term limits and consider removing said term limits.
Motion is stated.
Second?
Motion second. The reason it's worded this way this it's been requested that I would put this on the agenda for tonight by some on the council, and this has to originate through the EDTA, and so we're requesting them to make that step. If anybody has any questions on that,
I think you just need to send it to the council.
we would.
I think the request is for the EDTA to look at what
Yeah.
their trust document says, and then I think it has to originate in their organization and then
It
come to the
originates
council with
there,
whatever their
and then
recommendations
they
are.
would have to send it to the council.
With whatever recommendations,
So
if any.
we're asking them as a body to look into it. We're not telling them to do it. We're asking them to consider it. And so, so we don't actually have to send this request to city council.
Mhm.
But when they make the decision, if they do so, then we would have to put that decision before council. Is that right, Adam?
That's the way I understand the indenture, yes.
And this was worded by Fred at my request to make sure that we allow it to be done if they so choose. All right, any other discussion?
No.
Call for the vote?
Shropshire,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Gantier.
Yes. Number 5, discussion and possible action to recommend that the Economic Development Trust Authority review the trust indenture and consider implementing minimum attendance policies for trustees and policy for removal of trustees for failure to attend meetings.
Motion?
Second.
Our motion, same thing as the other, it's worded at our request, everything, same thing as number 4. So, any more discussion? Call for vote?
Brown,
Yes.
Gantier,
Yes.
Shropshire.
Yes.
Number 6, discuss, possibly recommend council action regarding Title IV, Chapter 1, Article A, Fire Department.
Motion.
Second?
Motion and second, and I'm gonna go ahead and ask Councilman Brown to discuss this a little bit. I'm aware of what he wants to discuss, but he knows it better than I do.
So the fire chief and I and the mayor and the city attorney have been looking at our fee structure and the way that we charge or don't charge fees within the city. There's the fire district of the fire department is much larger than what the corporate city limits are, and so shortly after being elected, the mayor challenged all of us, I think, in ways to find revenue. One of those is that is not being captured, I think, are fees associated with what our fire department does. Our sales tax does provide for the equipment and the manpower that we're here, but that doesn't always account for some of the costs that come with it once that manpower starts getting used. And so we've made some discussion changes, but we haven't done anything hard. I mainly wanted to get this on here tonight to say, hey, can we start having some serious discussions between you, yourself, Mr. Mayor, the fire chief, and the city attorney about what kind of changes we need to recommend to the council. And I spoke with Chief Young today about this. Some of the things that I think that we should look at, almost all insurance policies have a $500 rider on them that our current ordinance doesn't allow us for us to capture. And so I think that that's something that we could look at. I still think that we should give the citizens within the city limits as much free service as possible. But I think that we should look at capturing some of these other costs when there's accidents that occur within the city limits. Our current ordinance doesn't allow us us to charge on those. And so I think that that's some things that we could look at. I know that it's worded in there something along, if they are residents of the city, then we either won't or don't have to charge them, and I think that we should stay consistent with that. But there are large semis that have accidents out here that require a large amount of spill control and other things like that, extended traffic control, and there's fee structures out there that allow for cities to recoup some of the costs that's associated with some of these bigger events. Something else that I think that we should look at for inside the city limits, it says that if anything's been declared a public nuisance, but I also think that we should also look at fires that are started illegally. So if they're started without getting the proper permits, or if they're started in the middle of a burn ban, or as acts of arson, I think that we should put something in our ordinance that allows us to recoup some of these things to help us get those back. And then I just think that we need to take a long look at what our fee structure is. And then the last thing is, almost every fire department I know of has a subscription service, and I think that we should look at what a subscription service could look like for the citizens that are outside of our corporate city limits but are still within our fire protection district. And typically the subscription allows the subscriber to not have the burden of the additional cost if a fire truck or multiple fire trucks are to come out there. So they pay a yearly or something like that. There had been some discussion about if the utility board could assess a monthly fee that the citizen would sign voluntarily, allowing it to come out of their utility payment every month to pay for their monthly subscription. I think the city of Sapulpa or Sand Springs 1 has something similar to that already set up. And it's just something that they're opting into. And I'm curious if you could check with Jared if that would be something he would be willing to do. I think that I would get a lot, but not all of those within our fire protection district on there.
Just for clarification, you and I know the answer, but just for clarification, the people outside that are in our fire district pay the $65 a year fire subscription.
They can pay it.
Can.
Yes.
Would you clarify your point of view on that, just so it's a little more clear, so it's not so optional? Is that where you're going with that?
Well, I
You
mean,
want to still give them the option to subscribe if they want?
yeah, if they subscribe, then it's this much, whatever. But if you don't, we're going,
You'd be charged.
realistically, you're going to be charged what it's going to cost for a fire
It
truck.
behooves them to have that.
Correct.
Because it gets very expensive. You pay for the vehicle and the time. If you're out, I don't know, say 429 somewhere, and they have to come out to you, it gets very expensive.
Yeah.
So it would behoove them to.
And we have a fee structure already set up. This is not something we're modifying it. We're not actually, this isn't new. What we're doing is trying to fix the ordinance that legally bolsters our ability to continue to collect on these things. And this is at the request of several people, but the fire chief and I think a lot of the fire department guys are all in support of, hey, this needs to occur and that it can help with some revenue sources. So
Also, I'm just asking a question here, if we do, like you're talking about wrecks and stuff and semi-wreck or whatever, can the fire department, would they be able to actually bill the insurance of whomever
Yes.
is at fault from that wreck?
Yep, so you could build if my understanding is that the fire department can build the insurance, and then whatever's left over, they can go after, on the carrier company or whoever. And some of the discussion Chief Young and I had was there's probably a residential subscription rate and there's probably a commercial, and he has an idea about a fee structure on that I think will work.
How about the industrial park?
Same thing,
That would be,
commercial.
yeah, it would be more than $65 for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I don't know what we're gonna wind up with, but you would start out at probably a higher rate that's your bottom tier. And some of the things that Chief Young and I talked about were, if your business is beyond a certain square footage, then it's probably gonna add some amount to it. If you have beyond so many employees, then it's probably, if you have hazardous materials on site, then there's probably going to be, depending upon what all is on site or how big everything is probably gonna vary on what that fee should be.
It'll be a set structure, but it'll have enough variance that it will cover all of those elements. So 0 to 50 employees with hazardous, this is what you're gonna pay.
Right.
So almost I don't wanna say à la carte, that sounds kind of silly, but it's the same
Yeah.
concept. This and this, that's gonna be your total. And I think what you're asking is start the conversation, not settle on the fees.
Yeah, and so the current ordinance allows for by motion or resolution can adopt and change regulations relating to all of this. But honestly, I don't think that this committee is where it belongs for us to just sit here and hash it out. I think that the best thing is for yourself, Chief Young, probably Mr. Crisp, and on some of this as far as the billing, and the city attorney to get in the room and say what needs to go and what needs to stay and what are we adding. And then I'm gonna probably get on a soapbox here. I honestly don't understand why this committee exists to begin with. We are advisory only, and I may step on some toes here, and I don't mean to, but this is a layer of government that probably just doesn't need to exist. It should probably just, if we want to do something, it takes council action anyway. I don't understand why we don't just start it all in the council's chambers to begin with. So, you made it exist, or is that?
No, you're getting a grin from me for what you're saying, so.
I mean, if you want to vote to abolish it, you're going to get it from me, and I know I said on it. I just don't understand why we exist.
The biggest thing about existing is when it gets time to insurance. There's a lot of insurance discussion that comes up prior to, and hashing that out, and then you,
Well, it's a lot like the Budget and Personnel Committee used to be. Before my time, even before my time on the council, those things were created to cover layers of the onion. So, I hear you.
So I'll step back off my soapbox, but I've talked to Chief Young, and I told him that was what I intended to talk about tonight, was to recommend to you guys to say, hey, let's have something. The only other thing I would add is, realistically, I think I would like to see this going into place by July 1 for the next fiscal year, so that we can start figuring out where we're going to go at. We're not going to know probably very good on what kind of fees and fines and structures and subscriptions are going to bring in for another year, but that would give us a year's worth of data for some level of planning. So possibly by the first meeting is obviously really soon, but maybe the second meeting in May, we can maybe have something ready to present. That's all.
All right, so as far as action on this, what is your intention?
I don't know that we have to take action, but other than saying, Mr. Mayor, please get with the fire chief and the city attorney, and, you know, if we're talking about using a utility bill as a mechanism for people to pay it, then we'll get with Mr. Crisp and see what that might look like. I don't know if that's an option or not.
can we change council on there to maybe administrative action? Would that work instead of council action, instead of
Sure.
just be administrative action, and then that would let?
Did Joy make the motion, or did I?
I did,
Okay.
I think I
So
did.
you want to amend your motion?
Amended my motion to change the word council in there to administrative.
And
Okay.
do we
Yep,
change-
I'll agree to that.
Is there further discussion? Call for vote?
Gantier,
Yes.
Shropshire,
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
All right. Number 7, there was a scrivener's error. I'll read it as it should be. Discuss, possibly recommend council action regarding Title II, Chapter 2, Article A, Hotel Motel Tax.
Motion.
Second.
Discussion.
I have some.
Sure.
So And I believe our chairman of the Hotel Motel Board is here, Mr. Majors. So when looking at this, a couple things stuck out to me. One, our current definition of a hotel or motel is anything which is 3 or more rooms. And this is something that I think that we need to change. I don't think this is something that the Hotel Motel Board can look at. But I don't know why that we've established that at 3 or more rooms. And it may require some work as far as what was presented to the voters. I don't know if this was in there or not, but my personal thoughts are, why does it have to be 3 or more rooms? If you're renting a room out, you're renting a room out. Now, I don't think that that's the same as a rent or a lease, but I think that that's something that we should look at. Is I don't know why there has to be a 3-room threshold if it's, what's the difference between 1 and 50? And then the other one is the use of the funds is city development activities and/or events identified by the Hotel Motel Tax Allocation Board and approved by City Council. This is one that I think might be a good opportunity for Mr. Majors. I don't know, but I think that we should strongly look at what are we doing with these funds, and is there anything that we could change in the distribution of those funds to be more beneficial for the city.
Would you like to step
You want to tell me what you have in mind there? It's up on our agenda for
Sure.
discussion tomorrow.
And you're welcome to step up where everybody else can hear you speak.
So
Sorry.
I think
Thank you.
the current allocation, if I remember right, is, and I took a picture, so maybe I'll remember it better. 40% to the Pryor Area Chamber of Commerce, 20% to the Pryor Public Schools,
Right.
10% goes to Main Street, and then 30% goes to local organizations, but 10% of that is for 100% matching grants for sports facilities, and 20% is what's left for that. Is that an accurate breakdown?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to try to say this as nicely as possible. Our school system is very solvent and has a very flush account. We have other organizations in town, I think, that are probably not as financially stable as the school system is. When this was passed in 1998 and then modified in 2000, this was pre-Google and pre some other businesses in town that I think have really helped the school system become as financially viable as they are. I'm not saying some conversations don't need to occur with the school, but I think that the 20% that they're getting may be better served in the community at other organizations that could use it that aren't as financially solvent as they are.
Right.
And so I think that that's a big one that we should look at. Something else that I've discussed multiple times is when people rent different facilities within the city, depending on what the organization is, we refund them their money back. And I think that that's something that they should be coming, if they want to get their rental fees back, I think that they should be lobbying you guys and saying, hey, we're bringing this event to town, whatever it is. If you guys can make the determination whether they get their $50 deposit fee or whatever it is, and then the money staying within the city, we're using tax funds that are just made to be distributed for these events to come into town. Why are we not having them apply to you guys and come back? And this is not like judgmental on you. I think that that's a better way of us to do business, to keep some of these funds within the city.
I don't know if dealing with rents of facilities would be applicable to the Hotel and Motel Board, though, because we're dealing with that specific set of revenue stream and how it's distributed. So that's a different revenue stream.
I don't necessarily think that the rental is. I don't know that it would be any different than applying for a $50 grant from you guys that covers the use of the building. And I don't know what that looks like, but
Who's refunding it now?
the city is getting the check and turning around and writing another check back out, and so we're net profiting zero.
So why would we get the hotel motel board involved in that process?
Because for every rental that we're netting zero, the city's general fund could continue to be netting $50, or what are the rental fees? Is it 50?
Depending on the building, if it's ground, it's 50.
Uh-huh. And then there's some others that are, it's now it's 80, but there's some other buildings as well that are, or other facilities that are refunded from time to time. And it's just money that could stay in the general fund. And if they are bringing citizens or bringing people into town, that kind of is the purpose of the hotel motel allocations, is for some sort of revenue coming into the town. It allows that money to stay in the general fund rather than us just giving free use of our facilities. Does that make sense? And if they want their money back, then they're going through the work of filling out an application to be made whole on that, rather than us just turning around and writing a check.
Yeah, I'd hate to see a bunch of applications just to get rental fees back, I guess is where I'm going, but if the city wanted to stop refunding it, and that was known by who was renting it, then I think they would look for that refund somewhere else, whether it be sponsorships or hotel, they'd be on their own where they find it at.
Essentially, that is what I'm
And the
suggesting.
hotel
Is that
motel board would be one of those options. I wouldn't want it to be like a set that everybody that rents the facility comes to the hotel motel board for $100.
essentially, that's what I'm saying, is that we do stop refunding it, but that a mechanism is in place that they could apply through you guys to get those rental fees back if that's what they wanted to do.
I don't see where that would be off the table for them.
So
Yeah.
that is my suggestion. And then,
As far as
quite
the
honestly, I imagine there's
percentages,
going to be several people that aren't even going to go through the process of doing it.
yeah. Or they might find it somewhere else. They might get a sponsor. That's might be easier than applying for our board and asking for us to give it to them.
Yeah, I just think that it's not like we're missing thousands of dollars, but we're missing some money that we could keep in the revenue stream, rather than just saying somebody applies and we, if they're a civic organization, we're just turning around and writing them a check right back, just out of practice.
That sounds like a city issue to me. That
It does.
I prefer the city just stop doing that if the city wants to stop doing that, and then if the people react to that by applying for the hotel, then that's what they do.
I don't disagree with you, and I think I wanted to give you an idea about what my ideas were on the hotel motel board, if that's fair enough. But
Discussing, yeah.
yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with you there. But the main one is I would like us to look at what we're allocating to the school. And I think there's been some discussions had with the school about this, so I don't think we're catching anybody flat-footed on this one, but that is the big one.
Okay, we've had discussions about that also.
Okay.
It's on the agenda tomorrow night, so.
Okay.
Also, you're talking about the 3 rooms thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I actually came here to begin with, was because I wanted to see if you guys could somehow make it where we for sure collected from Airbnbs.
That is where that was going with
It's kind
that.
of unfair to the hotels that
Yep.
we don't collect it from the Airbnbs. And the way I read it, it sounded like it would apply to Airbnbs. You go further in there and it talks about a bed and breakfast
Mm-hmm.
specifically, which is kind of what an Airbnb is.
That's what B&B stands for, so.
You know, when you rent an Airbnb, you do get 3 rooms. You know, you might get a living room, a bathroom, and a bedroom. It just depends on how you decide, how you count those rooms.
Yeah.
I don't think that 3 rooms necessarily should lock you guys into 3 different rentals in one facility.
No. To qualify as a hotel or motel, it's, they have to obtain sleeping accommodations in which, so it doesn't say that they have to sleep in 3 rooms, but there has to be sleeping accommodations available in which 3 or more rooms are used for the accommodation of transient guests. So, but I don't understand why it has to be 3. And, there's some other parts in there that talks about they have to register with the city treasurer which is
Do Airbnbs currently have to register with the city?
every operator shall file with the city treasurer a registration certificate in a form prescribed by the city treasurer within 10 days after the effective date hereof. If they've opened after, then within 3 days of such commencement or opening. So, yes, they should all be filing something with Ms. Ballou. Yes, sir.
You mind
No.
All right, so this has been a hot topic for a hot minute. I agree, if you've got the Airbnbs, they should be there. That mechanism technically is in place. But the city, and Jay, you can jump in if I'm wrong, the city has not had a mechanism physically to go out and collect as the Airbnb industry has increased. So a lot of what we see is people building a home and then they don't register it as a commercial property. They leave it residential for whatever purposes. So,
If I can
Yeah.
interrupt, I also thought that should apply to 3-bedroom rentals. But according to a attorney opinion that Courtney solicited, when I had that question, that only counts for 3 separate rentals on the same property. So it would only, our registration requirements and taxes would only apply if they had 3 separate rentable Airbnbs on the same property.
so I think we really need to clarify this. I also think one of the things to keep in mind, things like campsites for RVs, any kind of little rental properties, things like that all need to be considered. So as we go forward, I think this needs some love and attention. I think when we talk about the 3-room, why is that so clear? If you're renting it out and you're collecting an income on a temporary,
Non-residential use.
well, what do we want to call that? What do you call it? You go to a hotel, basically if you're booking your house for somebody to use,
The timeshare?
even timeshares, I think we need to look at that. They are revenue sources that we can collect on. So in addition to that, if you don't mind, I'll kind of tie in what we were talking about, because Tyler was talking about the allocations. Are you guys okay if I kind of jump to that topic while we're on this? When we talk about the allocations, where they go, we need to look at that because it also has on there still that the school is collecting for band days. They haven't been getting that $2,500 because there hasn't been band days. But clearly that's an indicator that the ordinance is out, or the resolution's outdated, needs to be cleaned up. One of the things that we've got to our advantage, and I think as the city, and as you and your board look at this tomorrow, when the city invested in the Placer AI data, it allows us to look at where people are, right? So we can do a geofence and we can look it up. And the first day that we got it, I think Adam said, "I'm nerding out, these reports are fun," or something like that. You were having a lot of fun. But one of the first reports that we did was in relation to the soccer fields, baseball fields, softball fields, the festival areas, etc. We took a look at from January 1 to August 31st, which excludes football period for the football fields, the Edwards Soccer Complex. In 2024, there were 35,100 visits to that facility, okay? If you ever go that way on a Saturday or in the evenings, if you were to go there last night, there were probably 100 cars there, teams everywhere, right? Baseball, softball, that's one facility over here, tends to get neglected, but it is mentioned on the ordinance as the sports facilities, right? And as we look at areas that can become revenue streams, and I think, me excluded, probably Chris, most of you in here have had kids that have played sports or done those things. It's a combined 63,400 visits to the softball, baseball fields in 2024, 63,000. That tells me that we're missing some revenues. A lot of the things that we find from that is the tournament groups are coming, but we're not capitalizing on it. Maybe we need to find a way to get revenues to make that facility a money-making, self-sufficient facility. When we look at that ideology, we look at the golf course. A few years ago, Dennis Bowman asked me, he says, "Mayor, what are we gonna do with the golf course?" I said, "As long as you keep the balls flying, you're good, but you're not getting any more from the general fund." Right? Dennis has done that and has become self-sufficient and is seeing major increases in his revenues, so much to the point that he's been able to make improvements to the property to improve the experience of that. I think we can take that same program and encourage the hotel motel board to look at that. You follow what I'm saying? When we look at the Freedom Fest, for an example, we noticed that by use of that facility in 2023, we had 2,200 people there. 2024, we had 2,600. Now, I'm not advocating that we make Freedom Fest bigger, but what I am saying is combine that 2,600 with the 35,000. There's 40,000 people in the summertime on that property. 4 times the population of our city. What are we doing to make that a better, more profitable place? We know people are there. We know people are we doing things that can help bring more people and bring more revenues? They come to town. They're not just coming to town to play soccer. A Saturday anywhere my family goes is a minimum of $100 times 40,000. So we need to consider that. But I do think it is spot on for the city to put a strong emphasis, and for the hotel motel board to consider looking at the allocations to that and maybe supporting those facilities a little bit better and a little less where a little less isn't needed. If that makes any sense.
Well, I agree with all the concepts and theory as
That's all
we
I got.
discussed. How though do we make the motion to direct this to be initiated? Is
I
my
think the
question.
chairman of that board heard.
I think this accomplished what I was hoping to accomplish, was a conversation between everybody, between the two entities.
Yeah, I think you bring up the questions about the ordinance. Is there a way to tighten up the ordinance so Airbnbs are for sure something we could?
It is, and I think that, you know, maybe with your board, sounds like tomorrow you guys are going to discuss some things, so
Yeah.
sounds like you've heard from us, and maybe we need to hear from you as some areas that you guys see that might need. Obviously, that's a big one.
Yeah,
that,
send it to us.
You know,
Anything
2,000.
that we need.
The ordinance, to me, if it's just cleaned up where Airbnb, we get that revenue, because we're just trying to get the additional revenue so we can give it out to the people, and then we're gonna discuss about how we allocate those funds.
Okay.
And I know the idea of timeshares was brought up. Do we currently have timeshares in Pryor? But I
Who
know we
knows?
would have to have it in the future. It might be slightly different because they're partial owners. I don't know how that would work, but anyway, it's something that the attorney would have to look into, I'm sure, on that. So, all
Anything else from me?
Thank you.
right, thank you.
Good, thank you.
I do have one other question.
Okay.
There is talk about a need for some restroom facilities at the tennis courts and also at Bobby Buck Park. And so the use of the funds says city development activities and/or events. I think, you know, depending on what's decided tomorrow, but I think some of these funds might be available, that they could be grant funds for projects within the city. And I don't know how your board feels about that, but I would like that to have some consideration as well. You know, I think that the improvement of some of our facilities like that is only going to help bring or better the experience for people when they do come here. So,
I think as it's written right now, the 10% is earmarked for that type of thing. But I do think the feeling among the board is that needs to be a bigger priority to save back some money to possibly use it for bigger and better things than.
well, it's 10% of 30%, so it's really even less than 10%. But
It's, depends on how you read it.
yeah,
It's either 10% of the 30%, or it's 10%
And
that's
20%?
included in that 30%,
Okay.
which would still leave it at 10%, which I think was his intention.
okay,
I don't think he meant
That's
for it to
fair.
be 3%. I think he meant for it to be,
okay.
but I haven't talked to them about it either, but.
Okay, but that was just something that I think, I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be a repayment of somebody for bringing an event. Like, what I read, it could be used for things within the city as well to help to develop
Yeah,
some things. So.
and the main problem we had before was people applying to ask for the money. Like,
Right,
the softball field asked for money, and we gave them money, and they built the awning over the bleachers, and they redid their concession stand and things like that, but we can't give it to them if they don't ask for
Correct.
it too. But I do think there is a move to make more money saved for bigger projects that might be, maybe put together with, as a piece to other money,
Yes.
matching grants, T-sets, Cherokee Nation, whatever pieces we can put together to do something bigger than just a $500 reimbursement for something.
Yeah, and that's my overall goal. Kind of like we were talking earlier about, you know, the $50. It's not a lot of money, but it's something that we're not trying to take out of our struggling general fund, or, you know, it's not, you know, if it's $10,000 that we're not having to take out of our capital fund, it's $10,000 we're not having to take out of our capital fund. And,
Yeah.
you know, these funds, for a lot of people who don't understand, are not, these are out-of-towners that are staying at hotels and motels. If you're a citizen in Pryor and you stay at the hotel motel, you're not paying this fee. So they're funds from people outside the community that we should be using to better the community, and that's, I just would like to see us tapping into a better use of those.
Yep, I agree.
I don't want to say better. I would like to see us using them in a more robust manner, I guess.
More beneficial.
Yeah.
Good discussion. Anybody have any other discussion?
Yeah, one more while we're on this, looks up.
Yes, sir.
Be quick. The other thing that we've talked about with this tax is that we are collecting it. And I think that that's not the proper way for us to go about it. So if there were an action item that would come from this body tonight, I would ask that you consider maybe making the suggestion that the city go to the Oklahoma Tax Commission and request them to, you looked into the number on that, what was it, a point?
It's 0.5%, looks
That's-
like. So, and
Minimal.
it just requires a resolution from the city council. Being somewhat forward-thinking, I sent one to Zach already, so he's got it. So I think that, you know, as long as we're probably recommending it to go to council for them to have OTC do the collecting for us, I think that they would also capture some of these and could pair with sales tax records. They're gonna know pretty close as we
They have an
get that done.
enforceability factor behind them. Right now, we have Jay. And I don't feel that that's Jay's responsibility to go and collect that taxation.
I did request a ski mask.
But I think
Okay, so-
recommending to the council that we create that resolution, which Rec noted, it's already there.
Who made the motion?
I think that was on
Yeah.
Tyler's side.
All right, so you would have to amend your motion to reflect what the mayor's requesting.
Yeah, I think the council action is for us to have a resolution to have OTC
Collect that for us.
collected for us.
One less task we have to do.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah,
you'll amend yours?
I'll amend it too.
It's also, I think that we can actually, you can track it online like you can our sales
And
tax
it will
and everything
come
else.
more regular.
Yeah.
That's the hope, knock on wood.
So
right?
any more discussion concerning what the mayor just presented? Everybody okay and understand?
Present that resolution to council. You guys okay with that?
Call for the vote?
Shropshire,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Gantier.
Yes. Number 8, discuss possibly recommend council action regarding an ordinance amending ordinance 7-4-4 camping into 1, prohibit overnight camping within the city limits of Pryor Creek, and 2, allow for the use of a tent in the backyard of a private residential property owned directly by the camper for the purpose of family activities for up to 3 overnight periods. The purpose of the modification is to better ensure the safety and health of the city's general public while simultaneously recognizing the need to accommodate limited family activities.
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
I went back and looked at this, something that we discussed in city council, and they requested it come back here. Of course, always, you know, does this committee want to recommend action to the full council? But the two things that were discussed that I could gather, and I don't remember anybody having necessarily a problem with the verbiage. It was either, does the council want to make an ordinance? Some wanted to go ahead and vote for it, and some preferred to send it to a vote of the people. And that's what I remember from it, and that's the discussion that I wanted to bring out so that.
Well, there's another thing here too.
Yes, sir.
We also had a deal in here, if you had an organization that decided that, like, Free Wheel or what, the bicycle group that travels across the state,
Mhm.
there was a deal where they had to come down and let the city know, do a permit or whatever, if they were gonna have people that were gonna camp in the park overnight, things like that. That wasn't brought up in here. Also, we were talking about family activities, and we were talking about, if they had an RV or something outside, let's say somebody came in for Christmas, and they didn't have enough bedrooms for everybody, well, they could actually use the camper next
That
to
we
the
already
home.
have an ordinance that allows that for up to 7 days, if I'm not mistaken.
Right, that was, I don't know that it ever got passed, I don't know.
It did get passed, and then and from what I remember, the mayor in an emergency situation has the power to,
Authorize more days?
well, like if we had a tornado rip through, and I think
Yeah,
that was
yeah,
passed
mhm.
during previous mayor's term, if I'm
Mhm.
not mistaken.
It was,
And so that one is okay as far as the RV. This was specifically tent camping.
okay,
And, yes, I do remember, I don't think it was in the full council, but I do remember us, like you said, discussing some outside group, and it wouldn't be a bad idea to have a mechanism for that.
mhm.
Um,
Whoever the organization would, they'd have to come down here and either get a permit to use the park for, and at no charge or whatever, or maybe there will be a charge, who knows, but anyway, like, Freewheel, if they were gonna come through and they were gonna have bikers that were gonna camp out there, you know, for a night before, so they went on, that kind of thing.
I'm gonna say this, I would prefer, if we're gonna do something like that, what you're speaking, that it would be a separate one, because we're dealing, in my opinion, with two separate things here. This is dealing with the individual property owner, whereas
Mhm.
that is it's not I believe we need to address it, but that would be a different mechanism,
Well, I think it kind of took care of that though when it said prohibit overnight camping within the city limits of Pryor Creek.
Yeah.
So that would cover our city,
So from what I recollect about this was we had section 1, there was a couple different sections, and I don't have it pulled up in front of me. But the sections seem to conflict with each other. Like section 1 here says, we're gonna prohibit overnight camping within the city limits of Pryor. And then section 2 says, allow for the use of a tent. One saying we're not gonna allow it, and then one saying we're gonna allow it, and there was confusing language.
here's the.
I also think nobody wanted to vote on it that night, so I think sending it back down here was a way to get out of that. That's my personal opinion, but
I'm gonna read this ordinance
Yeah.
as we currently have, just for sake of clarification. 7-4-4 camping. A, consent required, the use of the parks and public areas within the corporate limits of the city for overnight camping is prohibited without the consent of the mayor and city council, and it gives the code and where to find it. B, presumptive evidence of camping, the installation or stopping of any trailer or the erection of any tent or shelter after 1 hour before sundown in the park areas of the city shall constitute presumptive evidence of the breach of this section, and that's 1988, yes? Oh, no, somebody else. Waiver. The foregoing prohibition and penalty may be waived by the mayor and city council in favor of any organized group or association for such time as specified, not to exceed 5 days and nights consecutively. So, I mean, according to this, if we had that particular group, there could be a waiver. And I do understand what Councilman Brown's saying about ambiguous and/or seemingly contradictory thoughts. And so I do believe it's a valid point to address. But that's what we have, and this is what we're looking at, and I just wanted to bring that out so people can discuss it however they see fit.
based on what we have here, I mean, I don't.
Yeah, Jay was not.
I'm not gonna be the scapegoat for what other counselors wanna do with this language. If they wanna have it, then let's take it to council, let's all have the discussion, and not let 3 of us sit here and dictate what the language needs to be. That's
Right.
my personal
It needs to
opinion.
go to council,
If somebody or the entire council wants to present something, then let's do that, and then let's take a vote on it. I don't want to sit here and interpret what I think the other 5 besides us do or don't want, send it to them, then they're like, no, that's not what we wanted, and it's gonna come back. And when at the end of the day, we're advisory in nature, and again, I don't know why we exist. So the language here is not the entire language that we had with us in November, if I remember right, when it went to council. From what I remember, there was some contradictory language, and
Could you wanna look at that? So you can read it real quick?
Are you talking about the actual, what we're discussing now? Because this, the last council meeting that we had was June 2nd, I believe is where this came from. I sent it to you in the text. This was the verbiage as it was at that last council meeting that they directed it back to us. And that's, I'm understanding why we use this verbiage. Certainly, if you want to recommend addressing it, changing it, modifying it, that's certainly okay. It's just, this was what was sent to us that was said to come back to council, and that's why I put back exactly.
well,
Best
1 and
I
2
could.
contradict each other. So, and I don't think that we can prohibit overnight camping within the city limits of Pryor Creek. I think what we've done here is be restrictive as to what we currently have, which is the use of city-owned property. I do think that we can restrict that, but I don't know that we can restrict no overnight camping within the entire city limits on property that we don't own.
No, the residential property, if they wanna camp out in the backyard, the kids wanna have a camp out or something in the backyard, they.
And I understand that
Able to do that.
they're wanting us to make a tent and direct how long that tent can be set up. There's probably definitely some sanitary reasons as to why that we might want to entertain that. But
I think camping and living in a tent are two different things. I think, you're gonna get into a legal argument no matter how you do this. I think the biggest thing that we needed to be careful of that night of the council meeting was, there were some voices put out that were walking a dangerous line of
Yes.
situations we needed to steer away from. And it seemed at the time that we were having a hard time coming back off of that. I'm not getting into who, what, why, how, but the idea is we had at the time given the impression that it may have been directed at an organization, a property, a place. I think we are not doing that. We're not telling, Polly Sue's organization that they can't do what they feel inspired to do. That's not the intent of this. That never was the intent. I think the original intent was I'm going to try to be very select in my words, and I hope they're not offensive. Vagrancy, transientism, those are the kind of things that we need to be focused on resolving in our community.
Health and welfare also.
There's absolutely no crime to being homeless. It almost appeared at the time that we could have been attacking that community or not. We want to make sure that, like, I think the words were said, we have nuisance laws. Those nuisance laws say if we have sanitation issues outside your tent, then we have an issue. Officer Humphreys and I approached one back in the woods on Corps land, but I say in Corps land, it was next to the Corps land south of Homeland. We'll just leave it to that. Somewhere in that vast array of trees. And when we got there, we did find some sanitation issues where they had been using the restroom on a trail and food that was spoiled and just that's an issue. Those are things we have to address. We don't want to get to where we're telling people you can't camp in your backyard, because as soon as we do, they're going to. We need to make sure that this is worded more appropriately. And I think emphasizing that living in a tent is different than camping. But I'm not a lawyer, nor do I want to be at this point. So I think the reason it came off of the council was because we needed that separation between
where some of it was heading and what the intent of it was. And so, any questions on that?
No, and if I'm kind of restating to make sure that we're not overlooking or missing. The idea is city property, we can make determinations on how city property is to be used. And we have to be careful how we're treading on people's private property for what they're using for private property use. So with that idea in mind, are we gonna recommend to the council to work on the language? Are we gonna try and split it here? What is the recommendation from this committee? How are we wanting to progress or proceed as far as addressing this particular agenda item?
I'm writing one for you.
Okay, I'll give you a few moments then.
So, made a bunch of notes, but number one is already in our ordinance, which is the use of the parks and public areas within the corporate limits of the city for overnight camping is prohibited without the consent of the mayor and council. I don't know why we need to be more restrictive and say prohibit overnight camping within the city limits. So I've completely struck that and then reworded number two, which is very long, to say prohibit the use of outdoor sleeping accommodations upon private property for up to 3 overnight periods. I think that we can still leave, and basically that would probably be subsection B in 7-4-4, and then B becomes C and C becomes D.
Have you seen this?
I don't know why we have to say it's a tent or that it's in the
Up to
backyard.
or excess of 3 overnight.
Well, it says for up to 3 overnight periods and what this said, and I think that is what
You
they're
said
discussing.
prohibit the use of. Allow the use of?
Oh, yes.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna read this out because sometimes when you hear it with your ears, this is a suggested verbiage from Councilman Brown. Allow the use of outdoor sleeping accommodations upon private property for up to 3 overnight periods. Is it consecutive overnight periods or do we want to change any wording on that?
Probably, but
Or do we want to address those little details?
no, you can put it in there. That's fine.
Where would you want to put it? I'm just, Mr. Mayor, is that kind of in line with what you were thinking?
Yeah, you better put consecutive, or they're gonna take the 10 up, put it down, pick it up, put it down, pick it up, put it down.
I just don't know why we have to have owned directly by the camper, Bob, and the purpose of the modification. I don't know that that needs to be in the ordinance, and the ordinance should be very
I think
plain.
we need to look at, and I agree, I think,
And I'm also not saying that I'm for or against, but it was sent back down here for us to make recommendations, so there's my recommendation, and we can take it back and vote on it.
I think what we need to look at is some of the things that we do, we tend to overcomplicate. When we brought this up in June, one of our neighboring towns took our verbiage, went past it, done, and they've had no issues. It was done in a 30-second discussion. Another town did the same thing, no problems. Meanwhile, here we are 6 months later, still hashing out words. Same with our bonding policy. We got wordy on that, and we got here, and next thing you know, we had a book and a half, and we turned around and we finally said, you know what, we're going to adopt it as the state's written. Boom, done. I think sometimes we get too far into the weeds. We just need to get them done and get them passed. And I think, you know, we're not looking to.
Such is the joy of having 8 of us with,
Yes.
8 different opinions.
I appreciate everybody's passion, but that's just my opinion is, I think sometimes we get too tied up on little words on things that,
All right. So Councilman Brown, you're saying I would ask that you make the numbers that you are suggesting, so that if we do this, we can give it to our clerk, so she's not trying to scratch her head and figure out what in the world we're trying to recommend.
Does that help?
So, all right, we have leave alone. What was read, and I'll reread it, will be B, allow the use of outdoor sleeping accommodations upon private property for up to 3 consecutive overnight periods. What was B will now become C, that's currently in there. What was C will now become D. Is everybody clear in understanding what this says? All right. Any other discussion? We have to, I guess, amend the motion that we send this for consideration to council. Is that how you want to do this?
Yes.
Who made the motion?
Yeah, I think that we just amend it as,
Okay, so, and is there a second, whoever seconded
Did
it?
I do it or did he do it?
You made the motion.
Okay, so I'll make the motion that we go with the amended verbiage.
Okay. And you second it?
yeah, I'll amend the second.
Is there any further discussion? All right, call for the vote.
Brown,
Yes.
Gantier,
Yes?
Shropshire.
Yes.
Okay. Let me give this to her. Before I forget, it's a spare use of grief.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I don't want to add to your complications in that office right now. Okay. Number 9, discussion regarding recodification draft provided by American Legal Publishing, I'm sorry.
Motion.
Second.
This is definitely not something we're going to take an action on. It's an awareness thing that we're trying to clean up, make sure that things that were outdated or changes that have been made through the time, getting it back to where it needs to be, and then the full documentation of this will be going to be approved by council, the full council. This is just a step, getting it out, letting people know, hey, we're working on this. This exists, and it's going to be modified as far as basically cleaned up. Nothing new other than what was already changed or approved in council. Is that pretty much what it is, Mr. Mayor?
When I spoke
Bringing
with
it up to date.
Mr. McBride, it's bringing everything up to date, and it's all virtually done. The only thing that he said would probably be amended was any actions that might come after today, and the addition of our purchasing policy and the codes that are associated with that. And he said that he was very close on getting that ready to go to council.
100%.
he said that he was gonna try to make it tonight for whatever reason. I'm not gonna, it's no big deal, but he was adamant that it is in the best interest of the council to get this codification done. Every time it goes on, it costs us money. He's okay with everything, and like Tyler said, his words were, we can do this purchasing policy after the codification is done. We need to get the codification done.
Yeah.
And that's end of story. And that this has been dragging on not dragging on like it's our fault, it's just the process is lengthy. So we need to wrap it up and be done with it so our attorney can move on to something else.
I think it was 846 pages or something
Yeah,
like
it's-
that.
And it's
So it
rather
was-
large.
Yeah, so, okay.
And it's not an action item, and like you said, that one ordinance that's gonna deal with the purchasing policy,
Well, you're gonna have that, you're gonna have other things that come through.
that may,
Things
that
are
may
gonna change
show
all
up,
the time.
that may show up at the next city council meeting. but
He said that it was close.
Yeah.
That has been discussed, and the only reason I'm bringing it up is some people asked about it, that will be taken care of, it hasn't been forgotten, it's in the works, so.
Well,
All right.
what we found with the policy was that the ordinance has had to change to align with it.
Right.
And I think that that's what's taken the longest.
Yeah, and it has to line appropriately. And it's one of those things where you gotta dot your i's and cross your t's, because it's an ordinance, so. it's being worked on, so, any other discussion? It's not an action item, so we'll move to number 10, unforeseeable business. I am aware of none. Mr. Mayor, do you know of anything that any of our committee members? Number 11, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second.
And I don't think there's any discussion. Call for the vote.
Gantier,
Yes.
Shropshire,
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
All right, thank you, everyone.